Madagascar's natural history is filled with weird and wonderful creatures. From the dinosaurs to now, its location as an island off the coast of mainland Africa has allowed for isolated animals to evolve independently to their relatives elsewhere. It's due to this reason that animals such as the fossa, lemurs, and tenrecs are found nowhere else in the world. Madagascar became an island when the supercontinent Gondwana broke up in the Jurassic Period around 180 million years ago. Then, 90 million years ago, when Madagascar was still connected to what would become India, tectonic movement separated it into an island, which steadily drifted west. The animals living in Madagascar at the time would eventually find themselves set adrift, unable to access the mainland. Here, evolution would take over and animals such as Majungasaurus would soon appear. Majungasaurus is not one of the most familiar theropod dinosaurs in popular culture, but is perhaps the most fearsome predator ever to live on Madagascar. Living between 70 and 66 million years ago in northern Madagascar's Maeverano Formation, Majungasaurus was one of the last surviving dinosaurs when the end Cretaceous extinction sealed the fate of its kind worldwide. Here, in the forests, plains and wetlands of what would one day become the Mahajanga province, this hunter was king. Today, we will be taking a look at the natural history, discovery, and life of Majungasaurus, meeting it up close to discover how it hunted and thrived in ancient Madagascar in the late Cretaceous. Along the way, we will meet the animals that also called the Maeverano province home and discover what just made Majungasaurus such a fearsome predator. Sit back and relax as we take you back to the realm of Madagascar's most impressive theropod. Majungasaurus was a member of a family of dinosaurs that did exceptionally well in certain locations towards the end of the Cretaceous period. The abelisaurids. These carnivorous theropods, known for their tiny arms and short snouts, are represented by some of the most iconic animals of the Cretaceous. South America's Carnotaurus, Asia's Rajasaurus, and mainland Africa's Rugops are all abelisaurids, who share a common ancestor with our Madagascan macropredator. While Majungasaurus was large by the standards of Madagascan predators, it was not particularly large when compared to the world's biggest theropods of its time. It was capable of reaching lengths between 5.5 to 7 meters, or 18 to 23 feet, when fully grown, and likely weighed between 750 to 1,100 kilograms, or between 1,600 to 2,400 pounds. Majungasaurus remains belonging to potentially larger individuals have been unearthed from the Maeverano Formation's rocks. But these are fragmentary, and it is not possible for scientists to reliably determine if Majungasaurus could grow much bigger than 7 meters at this point in time. Majungasaurus's skeleton was reminiscent of the classic abelisaurid model. Its skull, while blunt and short, was proportionately longer than, for example, Carnotaurus. The skull of this dinosaur is extremely well known and is also substantially wider than the other abelisaurids of the Cretaceous. Majungasaurus's skull was adorned with rough, bumpy textures on the outside of the bone, a staple of abelisaurid craniums, which grew more intense with proximity to the snout. The most striking feature of this animal's skull was the presence of a blunt horn projecting from the top of the animal's head, which may have been covered in keratin when the animal was alive. The presence of the horn is a key indicator of its ancestral connections to dinosaurs such as the Indian Rajasaurus, whose cranial horn was very well pronounced. Within Majungasaurus's mouth was filled with rows of short-crowned, razor-sharp teeth that were efficient tools to help it tear at flesh. With the exception of Rugops, Majungasaurus had more teeth than any other abelisaurid, with 17 in both the dentary of the lower jaw and the maxilla of the upper. Majungasaurus's legs were short in comparison to its overall body length, with a prominent bony crest on its knees that may have served to reinforce the limbs. Moreover, its ankle bones were fused together, and the 3 digits making contact with the ground on its feet were broad, splayed, and tipped in sharp claws. Majungasaurus's bipedal posture was balanced out by its tail and neck, both of which were held horizontally to the animal's body. The dinosaur's neck in particular was made lightweight with openings and cavities across the bones, yet they were generally thicker and more robust than other abelisaurids. These thicker bones came with prominent muscle attachment points, to which hardened tendons were attached, making the dinosaur capable of carrying heavy prey items. Its forelimbs, like those seen in all abelisaurids, were stubby and extremely short. Moreover, its hands and fingers were immobile, as they lacked the pits and grooves in the bones, allowing them to flex and grab using their digits. As it stands, scientists doubt whether Majungasaurus even had claws on its fingers at all. Majungasaurus was first brought to the attention of the scientific world when French paleontologist Charles Deperet described theropod bones that were brought to his attention following their discovery in 1897, 1896. The bones, consisting of a hind claw, 2 teeth and some isolated vertebrae, were found coincidentally by a French military officer stationed in Madagascar as he walked along the banks of a shallow river. Uncertain whether or not he was looking at an entirely new genus, Deperet placed the bones within the wastebasket taxon Megalosaurus, formerly a placeholder for many newly discovered yet uncertainly identified medium to large theropod bones. Megalosaurus is now more well defined and is not closely related to Majungasaurus. The name Megalosaurus crenatissimus was initially assigned, the specific name meaning most notched, referring to the sharp, serrated edges of the dinosaur's teeth. The genus Megalosaurus would not hold these remains for long, however, and Deperet soon reassigned them to Dryptosaurus, which at the time was equally poorly known. Now, scientists understand Dryptosaurus to be a relative of the tyrannosaurs, and again is not closely related to Majungasaurus. Over the following half-century, more and more remains, albeit fragmentary, were found in Madagascar's Mahajanga province that resembled those described by Deperet in 1896. The bulk of these were stored in France's Muséum National d'Histoire Naturelle, building up a strong basis for comparison by the time more concrete evidence for a new genus was described in 1955. That evidence would come in the form of a jaw bone that was visibly different to both Megalosauruses and Dryptosauruses, with much more defined curves. René Lavocat, who described the find, assigned them to the genus Majungasaurus in reference to an older spelling of Mahajanga, in which the bones were found. The hunt for Majungasaurus would expand yet again in 1993, when Madagascar's University of Antananarivo would work with the State University of New York to fund the Mahajanga Basin Project. The project consisted of several expeditions to the Maeverano Formation near to the village of Berivotra, where Cretaceous period fossils were known to occur. Over the 8 expeditions that followed, tens of thousands of fossils would be found belonging to not only Majungasaurus, but plenty of species entirely new to the fossil record too. In the first expedition alone, hundreds of Majungasaurus teeth were unearthed, and by the latest expedition, the entire skull was known. Today, Majungasaurus is one of the best-known theropod dinosaurs, with only elements of the pelvis, forelimbs and tail still unknown. In 2013, Majungasaurus was placed within its own subfamily inside Abelisauridae, known as the Majungasaurini. This linked together all abelisaurids that were closely related to Majungasaurus, which included several Asian species with which the former shared a recent common ancestor. The strikingly similar Rajasaurus, as well as Indosaurus and Rahyolosaurus, all from India, are placed within the subfamily, as is Arcovenata, a Western European genus from France and Spain. While abelisaurids are also known from across South America, these species are assigned to the clade Brachyrostra and are less closely related to the Majungasaurines, which includes the likes of Carnotaurus, Scorpiovenata, and Ilocalycia. With Majungasaurus's skull being slightly longer than other abelisaurids, it can be considered that it had different feeding habits to some of its relatives. The broad, short skull of Majungasaurus is believed to have been an adaptation to help it withstand the pressure generated when a prey item tried to escape or twist its way out of trouble. Many other large theropod groups, such as the Carcharodontosaurids, had long snouts which were able to deliver powerful bites, yet could not cope well with the twisting and turning of their victims. A good modern analogue is the difference between the snouts of canids and felids. The latter, more comparable to Majungasaurus, use the bite and hold technique of grabbing on to a struggling prey item with great force, using their immense muscles to hold the prey in place as it dies. Canids, however, deliver multiple bites to weaken a prey item before it dies. The Carcharodontosaurids likely did the same, causing gradual bleeding wounds with slashing teeth. Majungasaurus' huge neck muscles and exceptionally broad jaws back this up. As large prey animals struggled in its jaws, this theropod was capable of holding them still without breaking its own neck in the process. In fact, Majungasaurus's teeth seem to be equipped specifically to prevent slicing into its victim. Slashing theropods, such as the Carcharodontosaurids, had teeth that were banana-shaped, curved both at the front and back edges. Majungasaurus's teeth, however, were only curved at the front, with the back being entirely straight. This would have reinforced the teeth, allowing them to hold animals without breaking off, giving them a broader base from which to secure prey. Studies have shown that Majungasaurus replaced its teeth every 2 or so months, up to 13 times faster than other theropod groups. This may indicate that immense stress was placed upon the carnivore's teeth as it fed, and that, despite their robust build, teeth were often lost or broken in the process of feeding. It was therefore imperative that a frequent, steady supply of replaceable teeth were provided to prevent the dinosaur from starving. The only known large herbivores from the Maeverano Formation are sauropods, and Majungasaurus is believed to have therefore been a specialized sauropod hunter. The most common Madagascan sauropod in Majungasaurus's day was Repetosaurus, a titanosaur that could reach lengths of up to 15 meters or 49 feet. To take on an adult Repetosaurus would be a daunting task even for the largest Majungasaurus, and the bite and hold technique was undoubtedly much more effective against animals of their size. Moreover, Majungasaurus was not as fast as some of the larger, more slender theropods on the mainland, and as such, likely targeted lumbering, slow-moving prey. The final piece in the puzzle is the presence of Majungasaurus's tooth marks on the bones of Repetosaurus, indicating that it at least fed on, if not killed, these giants. Sauropods may not have been the only item on the menu for Majungasaurus, however, and there is substantial evidence to suggest the species may have practiced cannibalism to a degree. The same tooth marks found on Repetosaurus bones have been found on Majungasaurus bones, linking them to the consumption of the flesh of their own species. Majungasaurus is the only large theropod known from the Maeverano Formation, and there is little evidence to suggest that another species was present during the late Cretaceous that could have been responsible for these wounds, given how well studied the formation is. It has not been determined if Majungasaurus actively hunted or simply scavenged the meat of its species, but following the recent discreditation of the Triassic theropod Coelophysis' taste for its own kind, Majungasaurus remains the only non-avian cannibal dinosaur in the fossil record. For now. Judging by the presence of the horn atop the heads of Majungasaurus, it would seem that competition was common between individuals of the same species. Whether or not said competition was aggressive in nature is unknown, but it was likely more of a display tool than a combative one. The horns contained a hollow cavity that would have weakened their overall structure, and they most likely served as display tools to intimidate rivals or impress mates. Both males and females had these horns, and so they may have been used in territorial displays, warding individuals away from regions already occupied by a dominant Majungasaurus. The Maeverano Formation is situated in north-central Madagascar along the coastline of the Mahajanga province. Despite belonging to an isolated island, it remains one of the richest sites for late Cretaceous fauna in the world, and numerous species of strange animals are known from its rocks. Wildlife in the Maeverano Formation lived in a semi-arid environment, dominated by a coastal floodplain that was separated by wetlands and river channels. The land was seasonally hammered by pouring rainfall, which may often have resulted in these rivers bursting their banks and sweeping debris across the landscape, which in turn buried many of the animals we see as fossils today. For this reason, the animals were quickly buried by sediment, and they have preserved exceptionally well. Vegetation in the Maeverano Formation seems to have been abundant and hardy, capable of withstanding the seasonal monsoons and periods of decline. Due to the close proximity of fresh and salt water in Cretaceous Mahajanga, a wide variety of aquatic animals are known. While the climate was dry, many of the rivers would have provided access to drinking water year-round for animals such as Majungasaurus, with many smaller creatures providing rich boosts to the ecosystem in times of need. Catfishes and gars drifted through the inland waterways, while out at sea, huge shoals of mullet-like vango were abundant. One of the most widespread and well-known genera of Cretaceous marine fish, Encodus, also lived off the coastlines here, a relative of modern lancet fish with long, fang-like teeth. In the fresh river water lived one of the most infamous amphibians of all time, Beelzebufo, the devil frog. While initial estimates placed it as measuring up to half a meter or 43 centimeters in length, recent estimates state that this relative of modern hyloid frogs was, in fact, no larger than a modern African bullfrog, reaching around 23 centimeters or 9 inches in length. Still, that's very large even by modern standards, and this frog likely spent most of its time lying in wait for prey in its riverine environment. Its large size meant that it may have been capable of preying upon animals as large as dinosaur hatchlings, before hopping off into the muddy shallows to digest its catch. Beelzebufo likely didn't shy away from hunting the young of small Gondwanatherian mammals that shared its wetland home either. Living here were Adalatherium, Lavanify, and Vintana, a series of badger-like animals that grew no larger than a chihuahua. Their descendants would go on to populate the island of Madagascar following the imminent end Cretaceous extinction event, as the reign of the dinosaurs drew to a close. Archosaurs were the stars of the show in Maeverano and existed in many forms. Crocodilomorphs were commonplace in the form of one of the largest predators of the region, Majungasaurus. This alligator-like animal had an exceptionally wide snout, filled with numerous sharp teeth for holding down prey in the shallows. Alongside it lived the much more humble Simosuchus, often depicted as a cute, dog-like crocodilomorph that spent its entire life on land. Darting between them was Araripesuchus, a long-legged, slender relative with large eyes and a long snout. As it is today, Madagascar was filled with birds during the days of the Maeverano Formation, the strangest of which was the toucan-like falcataculi. An enantiornithine bird, this long-beaked aerial species retained teeth in its mouth that may have been used for picking at the flesh of carcasses. The dromaeosaur, like Rahonavis, lived here too, a bird-like animal of uncertain placement. Reconstructions depict Rahonavis as an animal that resembled Velociraptor, although it may not have been closely related. Non-avian theropods were, as well as Majungasaurus, represented by the much smaller Machiascasaurus. This was a noosaurid, distantly related to the abelisaurids, but with a more agile nature and slender stature. Machiascasaurus is best known for its bizarre, forward-projecting teeth that point away from its mouth. These teeth would have allowed it to snatch small prey items, such as mammals, from hard-to-reach places, such as burrows or within the undergrowth. Alongside Rapatosaurus, the sauropods of the Maeverano Formation were represented by Vahini deperiti, a species that was named in 2014. Despite the tens of thousands of bones uncovered from the Maeverano Formation, Vahini is known from only a partial brain case, but is distinct from the very common Rapatosaurus fossils. It appears to be similar to dinosaurs such as Dinosaurus from the Indian mainland and would likely have fallen prey to Majungasaurus. Despite its incredible adaptations to a life hunting the biggest animals on Madagascar, Majungasaurus would inevitably go extinct when the end Cretaceous extinction brought an end to the Mesozoic era, and subsequently the entire age of dinosaurs. To this day, Majungasaurus remains one of the most unique and fascinating large theropods of the Cretaceous. And given the richness of the Maeverano Formation, there may be much more to learn about it in the future.